What's the worst buyer's remorse you've ever experienced? Once I bought 2 little zebra finches that then pushed their side food tray out and flew away. I saved up my allowance money for them too. I loved those little birds, even though they didn't really love me back. Probably trained to fly back to the store and be sold again. Brilliant. Friend of mine ordered a fidget spinner online. When it was shipped, he was totally excited, unwrapped it, gave it a spin, gave it another spin and was like. One time I bought a stereo set from a dude in a van outside a Kroger. I had just gotten my first paycheck at my first job. The guy had a working stereo plugged into an inverter in his car and it sounded pretty good. I peeked in the box and it looked legit. He wanted $300 but I was the lucky last customer of the day or some crap. I gave him my whole week's paycheck, like $180. I was so excited. I got home, opened the box all the way and it was all freaking fake. Holy frick, did I feel dumb. Holy frick. Might not be the worst, but the most disappointing and unexpected. I always wanted one of those aluminum scooters. I begged for one every Christmas and birthday for years and never got one. Which is really weird because my parents had no trouble dropping thousands of dollars on a ventriloquist doll that I didn't ask for. But anyway, basically my whole childhood I asked for an aluminum scooter, and even dropped hints to my husband that I wanted one. Never got it. So one day I said screw it, I'm going to buy the dang thing myself. Bought it, rode it once. Now it's been under my bed for months. I hate myself. Have a $22,000 loan on a truck that's worth about $15,000 and costs me $360 a month. It's going to be a long time before I can even consider getting a truck that hauls the weight I want to tow. My cousin has a loan for a tractor. I think it's close to $100,000. He doesn't even farm. After a vehicle accident, I was laid up on a couch on a swathe of medication. In the haze of the meds I bought 20 plus collector's knives and a hang drum and didn't realize until they were shipped to my house. This is how I have all of my expensive magic cards. I used to play every day. Now I haven't been in over 6 months. At least they mostly hold value, I guess. Nothing significant, but I once bought an incandescent light bulb which claimed to be blacklight. As soon as I walked out the store I realized that was just stupid. No hot wire bulb is going to produce significant amounts of UV. Sure enough, it was just a normal bulb with a purple colored glass. I still call them blacklights because they still make things glow. I had blacklights in my bedroom for years so that nobody could come in and throw the lights on and wake me up. My fan had 4 lights and you could turn on 2 at a time. 2 normal, 2 black. When I was 14 I really wanted an RC plane, so I bought one for about €100. The instructions told that you should rev the engine up and throw the plane in the air. After revving it up we threw it into the air, only to have it crashing down hard, breaking the axle and making the plane useless. I guess it flew about 1 meter. I went to a concert and bought a poster to frame for my office. Went to a frame downtown and she makes a nice showing of what they'll frame it with. Grand total was $450. The poster cost $35. I was so stunned that I agreed, gave them the poster and sat outside for a while thinking WTF. After about 30 minutes I went back inside and cancelled the frame and got my poster back. Ordered one off Amazon for $30. Looks fine. It blows my mind how expensive framing something is. I wanted to frame a standard 8.5 by 11 piece of artwork as a gift and some bored kid at Michael's quoted me $175. I walked my happy butt to Walmart, got a diploma frame for $98, and it looked great. Frick Michael's. Bought a holiday home with a friend who ended up being a pedophile. We obviously aren't friends anymore and I bought his half off him. 5 years later I'm finally trying to get rid of it, for less money than I bought it for. That escalated quickly. Hey mate, let's buy a vacation home. Sure, I frick children. I had a 1996 Ford Ranger that was incredible in every way. I bought it from a local horse farm when it was 5 years old, so it was a little beat up but it ran great. Got good gas mileage, did great in the woods. had a decent aftermarket stereo, but I was 21 and generally unhappy with everything at that time, so I sold it for absolutely no reason and bought a 1997 Jeep Cherokee. Biggest automotive regret of my life. This thing was an absolute lemon. Within a couple weeks of bringing it home, the transmission started to slip, the alternator wasn't working right, one of the power windows stopped working, the 4x4 wouldn't always disengage, and a bunch of other issues. I wanted my Ranger back so badly. The good news is the kid I sold it to in 2005 still has it and still uses it as his daily driver. I've since moved away, but the kid ended up moving to the same area, so I still see that truck around. I'm glad it's still going strong. This resonates with me. I've got a 96 Ranger. It's a pretty little truck, gets great mileage, and has zero issues. I spent like an entire summer making weekly payments on a crappy Chinesium electric scooter. I don't remember how much it cost, but it was way too much. In the span of a week after taking it home, I had buyer's remorse due to getting made fun of for being too lazy to pedal a bike, dumping it and screwing up the finish, battery life turning out to be complete crap, finding out it was slower than a bike due to the fact that I was roughly twice the size of the little Chinese kids this thing was clearly made for, generally realizing what a freaking dork I looked like, ended up going back to a bicycle until I finally got a car. Sold the stupid thing for less than half what I paid for it. Really, I ended up with buyer's remorse for pretty much all of the stupid things my parents made me buy in installments. Now if everyone who rides Bird electric scooters could make this realization. 40-year-old 1968 Galaxy 500 2-door. Only 2,500 still on the road when I bought it. Car was perfect inside and out, but it had sat neglected for 10 years. I replaced the motor mounts, battery, electrical wiring, fuel lines, gas tank, shocks, springs, radiator, fuel pump, multiple seals and more. Car was a money pit. Restoring cars is a rich man's hobby. I'm not rich. The thing you have to understand about classic cars is that you will never stop repairing them. If you can accept that and keep to it, your car will outlive you. In the 1980s, my father thought it was a good idea to buy a Toyota station wagon. On the way home he asked us if we liked it. Not a single one of us said a word. We owned that car for 1 year, then sold it. We still laugh at my dad about it to this day. He said he had instant buyer's remorse but didn't know what to do, so he pretended to like the car. Years ago I was trying to get my now girlfriend to like me, so I agreed to go to some vegan place with her. She's vegan, I'm not. Got a chicken salad vegan wrap. Looked good. Figured it was a pretty safe bet. It was the worst tasting single food item that I have ever tried. I took one bite and was actually angry that someone had dared to charge another human being for this. I can only assume its creator was a sociopath on top of being a vegan. This wrap was a freaking abomination. It was somehow both bland and repulsive. Nothing about it felt right. The texture, the consistency, even the colors just seemed wrong. It definitely wasn't expired, because I checked. It was just vegan food before vegans figured out how to cook. From what I've noticed, any vegan chicken does not taste like chicken. If I ever try veganism or vegetarianism, I'd avoid the fake meats and just live without. We decided to put an old wardrobe downstairs for towel and sheet storage. Just need to add shelves. My partner is a builder, but in my excitement to get the job done, I stopped by the hardware store on the way home. Never bought wood for a project before, had the measurements and just told the guy I wanted wood for shelves. He pulled out a handsaw and was like, "Do you have one of these at home?" I stupidly was like, "No, it's gone missing and it would be really helpful if you could cut it to size," thinking it would speed things up a bit. He cut the amount I needed for 4 shelves and I went in to pay $80 for shelving in an old wardrobe. Could have bought a crappy whole new wardrobe for that price. Short on money at the moment too, so almost cried, but saved face and paid it. Turned out that not only did he sell me the most expensive wood option, but he also cut it really crappy and jagged with his handsaw, so it might not even fit properly. It was something like $12 a meter, and apparently I could have gotten cheaper stuff for like $2 or $3 a meter. The idea that he would use a handsaw in the hardware store is ridiculous. Table. I bought a Samsung Galaxy Note tablet thinking I would use it for taking notes in college. Boy was I wrong. Pen and paper, tablet. I bought a pair of $50 earbuds that ended up being uncomfortable and mediocre in sound quality. To be fair, I didn't know they were musician monitors, so that was probably my fault. Literally everything I've bought that I didn't actually need. When I check my bank account and realize I have $8 left because I went to Bojangles 4 times that week, I start to wish I hadn't enjoyed my cinnamon biscuits so much. About a year ago, I bought a $25 Canadian bundle of loot boxes in Overwatch. It was the first time I'd ever bought them instead of just opening the ones I was earning in game. It was a limited event and there was a really sweet D.Va skin I was hunting for before it disappeared. Every single one of these boxes was a dud. After 20 loot boxes, I had only received one legendary item, an event skin for Symmetra, a character I don't play. The remainder of the items mostly consisted of useless junk like stickers and voice lines. It was at that moment that I realized I had been scammed. I had given a company $25 real due to the specifically designed pressure of a limited time item for only the vaguest chance of any kind of meaningful reward, and I wound up with absolutely nothing for my money. I could just as easily have flushed a $20 bill straight down the toilet and gotten the same value out of my investment. I learned firsthand how incredibly weak the value proposition is in these types of loot box focused games, and vowed from that moment never again to spend a single dime on any kind of chance-based premium content in a video game. And I actively avoid buying games that contain systems like that in the first place. I am a crafty individual. I bought a Cricut maker when it first came out a few months ago. I made a few run-of-the-mill vinyl decals for people, cut some fabric with it. It cuts fabric like crap, leaves the ends completely frayed most of the time, and that was about it. But vinyl is a huge pain in the butt to work with, and I think most graphic tees are corny. I also could barely afford it at the time, but it looked so cool and I really thought I would enjoy it. I sold it for about $75 less than retail after 3 months. It retails for $400. I brought a copy of a vanilla version of a video game, then finding out after finishing the game that there's already a Game of the Year edition for said video game that includes all DLCs. I consider video games an expensive hobby, especially where I live, so I'm still salty about it. Sega Dreamcast. Not because I didn't love it, but literally a week after I bought it they announced the discontinuation. Took a long time to save up that much back in my day. The same thing happened to me, but I still played the frick out of that thing. I worked out a deal with my parents to split the cost as a Christmas present in 2000, and got Shenmue, Crazy Taxi, and Sonic Adventure on the same day. Dreamcast games got hella cheap that year. No regrets. Every time I buy candy, 2-3 chocolate bars for £1.20, they'll last me 3 days. 2 hours later, I have 3 empty chocolate bar wrappers and a stomach bloated with guilt. 2 hours. Whenever I hit up a deal like that, the chocolate bars are gone before I get home. One of them is done usually by the time I'll leave the store. Kindle Fire. Slowest tablet ever. Even slower than my last one, Xperia Z2. My tablet broke so I needed a new one and didn't feel like spending much money. Got a Kindle Fire HD8 and it's so slow now. Saving up for an iPad right now. I hate my Fire with all my heart. How a tablet made and sold by Amazon that doesn't want to open the ebooks that are sold through Amazon is beyond me, and doing anything on it is painful. My commercial high-rise building. I bought it for far less than some would pay for a home in the hopes of turning it into an indoor farm or at the very least, a really awesome hangout. Then the ex decided she didn't want to be married anymore and dashed all hopes and funds of ever being able to do anything with it. Here I am 6 years later and 3 months from still trying to refinance it and no hope in sight. My credit is still crap after the divorce due to all the debt I had to take over just to get the ex to keep from making me sell it. My funds are drained weekly by bills and there's no way I'll get the $70k I need to keep it. It just freaking sucks. I put my own life savings into it and it will all just vanish in August. FML. I always wanted to invest in a vertical farm. Start a Kickstarter to get that funding. We will back you. I spent $15 at a barber shop for a shave. They just took out a Gillette razor, not a straight edge. and didn't cut anything. I went home and actually shaved later that day. I bought a pig. This was to be a wonderful indoor pig as there was no swine allowed within the city limits. The issue was I was totally unprepared to care for a pig. The pig started to get flaky skin and itch on everything. It turns out you really are supposed to grease a pig and it's just as hard as it sounds. In the end I gave up my pig and he went to live on a farm to have a way better life than I could give him. My children were sad. I was out a lot of money and the poor pig was flaky. Do not buy animals without a ton of research. They deserve way better. P.S. I love you, evil Dr. Porkchop. I'm glad you were responsible and took it to a farm. I bought hearing aids and the sudden clarity drove me insane. I could hear birds, the unfolding of candy wrappers, the fridge running, etc. Took them back. Ignorance really can be bliss. It does get easier after about 6 weeks when your ears learn to tune out stuff like your clothes rustling. $3,500 55 feet HD TV a few years before flat panels became cheap and much better. What a turd. It died after a few years and I took pleasure in destroying the carcass. House. I bought a house because everyone said buy a house. Equity. Freedom. 5 years later, I've spent more on maintenance and repairs than the equity I've gained, and the housing prices in my area have stayed the same. Not to mention the headaches I wouldn't have had if I'd just been able to call a landlord and say this is broken. Please fix. I have no plans to have kids. I should not have bought a house. A $300 bong I was talked into purchasing by my ex-roommate. He broke it 20 minutes after I went to bed that same day. In hindsight, he probably did it on purpose. Well, that sucker owes you $300. Buying dress pants from Men's Warehouse. Those crooks rush you through the process of choosing, trying on, and fitting the pants so quickly, all of a sudden you're at the register with $400 in dress slacks after you walked in looking to buy a pocket square. You won't like the way your credit card statement looks, I guarantee it. I bought a $1,000 plus gaming laptop and then lost my job 2 weeks later. I felt so bad about having it that I didn't want to use it. The laptop did come in handy with filling out hundreds upon hundreds of job applications though, so there's that. Dumb like 7 or 8 year old me saved a ton of my allowance for Publishers and their Save the Whales campaign. I maybe saved $90, which for a kid of my age was a ton. I sent it in, had my mom do it, fully expecting to get a whale. I had even planned that the whale I would get, I assumed a baby, because sure, a big whale was too far-fetched, could live in my bathtub for a while, and maybe out in the pool I would dig for it at some point. I didn't really tell anyone this plan. It was just what I started drawing and writing about. I sat around waiting to come home from school to see a whale there for me waiting. Obviously in retrospect, when I just got a picture of a whale and a thank you letter, I was quite disappointed. I guess I would have had more buyer's remorse when I got a whale in the long run. But I was pretty bitter I didn't get what I paid for. I met my wife at the end of 2007. Both of us had bought our own houses at the beginning of 2007, just at market peak where we lived. By the time we were sure we were right for each other, got married etc. both of our houses were in negative equity by the time of 20%. We have bought another house together since and managed to use one of the houses to part exchange, but we are still stuck with the other. Rented out, but it only covers 66% of the mortgage. We hate that other house. It's still in negative equity even after 10 years of payments and market recovery in most places. Every time I buy a health plan that cost $100 is $1 and don't end up using it because I'll lack motivation to not be lazy and to actually sweat and get my heart rate going. Sweat and get my heart rate going. Snort some coke and sit in a sauna. When I was about 9, I was in the mall with my grandma. We stopped by Babbage's and I saw that WWF WrestleMania was out for the NES. I absolutely begged my grandma to buy it for me. She was on social security and was not rich by any means. $50 for a game was a large chunk of her monthly government stipend. After pleading and probably shedding some tears, she gave in and bought it for me. I was so excited, I didn't even want to go out and eat dinner with her. Spoiled me, just wanted to get home and play the game. I studied game manual for the entire hour drive back home. I get home, pop it in, and the game absolutely sucked. Worst game I ever had up to that point. I felt so bad. This was one of the first times I truly felt guilty for making a bad choice and wasting her money. She's long since passed, but I still own that copy and I still feel guilty every time I see it. I wish I would have apologized to her for wasting her money. On the other hand, it's a reminder of how much she was willing to do for me. Buying eyeshadow primer. I have since realized I don't wear eyeshadow that much to justify buying it. I just threw out a tube today. Dude, I understand. Sometimes that crap is sold so well. Technically wasn't a purchase, but a gift I got my mom for Mother's Day. Was pretty young. Definitely still in elementary school. Was out fishing, walking along the lake shoreline for miles and came across a duck nest with babies. They were so cute I took one home to give to my mom. Mama duck hounded me for the first few hundred yards then fricked off. Got home super proud of my gift and mom just got upset I stole a baby. Said she had no desire to care for another thing that would just make noise and a mess. Took it back to the lake and let it free in the open water all alone. Dad told me I basically killed the baby duck since it was out in the wild with no mother to take care of it. Cried for days about it and still feel super crappy 25 years later. Sorry duck bro. I'm not a duckologist, but I read somewhere that sometimes solo ducklings like this can fall in with a group of ducklings from another mom and she won't really care or notice. So maybe your duck bro grew up in a happy adopted family. Uni. More specifically, out of curiosity while at a sushi bar I saw uni sushi on the menu. Being younger and foolish, programmed by late night episodes of Iron Chef, I was stoked and just had to try it. Just had to, like a kid who have that toy he saw on television, but with no sensible parent to put the kibosh on buying it. It came to the table, looking beautiful in the way only sushi can. I probably would have taken a picture of it if they had smartphones and Instagram back then. I took my only bite and had to put every part of my being into not vomiting all over. It felt like snot-covered fish jello. It was the most vile thing I ever put in my mouth. It still makes me queasy to this day. Worst $8 spent, ever. My last phone. I got the phone I wanted but it was only like $10 for an upgrade. I did not take the upgrade and I regretted every cent of it. Tempur-Pedic mattress. Incredibly expensive and incredibly uncomfortable. Somehow these things feel amazing in the store, but are not pleasant to sleep on. One time when I was drunk I bought a juicer online. It was a beta clean so I rarely used it. Now someone else has that headache as I gave it to Goodwill after it collected dust in my basements for a year. As the guy who's bought every juicer he's ever had from Goodwill, thanks. Growing up my dad had a lawn boy mower that lasted like 20 years, so when I bought my first house I bought a entry-level self-propelled 6.5 HP mower myself and it was great. Lasted me almost 10 years. When it went I decided to replace it with a similar model and got one advertised as 6.5 FT, LBS. Gross talk. I thought it was strange that I couldn't find horsepower numbers quoted anywhere, but pulled the trigger anyway. I get it home and use it a couple times and it doesn't even have enough power to get up the hill in my backyard. That's when I did a bit of math to learn that the newer model intentionally advertised with a similar number as the old one actually only had about 1 stroke for the power. I was upset with myself for not running the numbers before I made the purchase, but just as upset with the company for deceiving me like that. I made the purchase through Amazon and when I explained the situation to them they actually refunded the purchase and let me keep the mower. I gave it to a friend who had just bought his first house and had a nice flat yard that would be perfect for this mower. I went out and spent about twice as much on a nice Honda that has been working perfectly ever since. I bought a bike off Letgo for $60. It seemed to only need a new rear derailleur and a tune-up. Turns out the frame is fricked and a new derailleur cannot be attached, so I now have a fixed gear bike that I don't want. Seller won't take bike back, or even offer a partial discount. End up selling bike to bike shop for parts, for $30, and now still no bike. I cried on the way home. I still haven't deposited the $30 check. Keep an eye out at your local Goodwill or second-hand store. They're getting decent bikes in the summer months that generally don't need a lot of maintenance repairs to get them up to snuff. I know at my local Goodwill, a lot of the bikes they get just need a quick gear and brake adjustment and a lubrication and they're all set. If If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.